all the saints who from their neighbors rest, worthy by faith before the world confess. Thy name, O Jesus, be forever blessed. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Thou wast their rock, their fortress and their might. Thou, Lord, thou captain in the outward fight. Thou in the darkness fill their wounds with light. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Oh, may thy soldiers faithful, true, and good, bright as the saints who nobly fought our good, and win away with them the victor's crown of good. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Oh, blessed communion, fellowship divine, we feebly slumber, then in glory shine. Yet all our longing for our life. Hallelujah, hallelujah. In both East and West, the iconography of the ages celebrates the four evangelists, usually in the form of four creatures, and in fact they're right here. This one is St. Mark, that is St. John the eagle, there's a lion there, and here is the symbol, I think it's this one, St. Luke, but anyway, this is done by Sister Martha, and it emphasizes the fact that each has his own power and characteristic as he presents the same Christ. Therefore we have not contradiction but complementarity when it comes to the four Gospels. It is the very fact that there are variations in detail which give a more convincing picture of the Lord that we have. When compared, for instance, with the Quran, the four Gospels stand up very well as a historic document of great value. And in fact, only about one generation ago, we had the discovery, I believe it was in Caesarea, of a block of stone which had an incision with the name of Pontius Pilate, and it was the correct time and date, indicating that this name is actually another clue that we have very much not a myth or anything resembling it in the creed that has come down to us from the apostles, suffered under Pontius Pilate. We have history in our hands. And in the case of St. Luke, we have a certain type of history. He emphasizes in his second volume, treatise as he calls it, to Theophilus, the Acts of the Apostles, that he, because he is not actually one of the apostles himself, had gone into it meticulously and had got from the records available, presumably oral and written, the best that he could find as regards all the details of what actually happened. And his writings are long and complete, and writing as a scientist, because he is a medic, a doctor, a physician, he writes with accuracy also with regard to the medical healing taking place. Someone therefore to be taken seriously, even on the historic level. Good Greek, he is with the name Lucas, he's actually therefore of Hellenistic origin, and he was a voluntary convert to Christianity who then became very closely associated with somebody else who was of rich culture, St. Paul, brought up at the feet of Gamaliel, a Pharisee with the strictest and strongest Hebrew tradition, Benjaminite, Hebrew of the Hebrews as he says, but also with good Greek, because he was of no mean city. No mean city means that it was actually a city which was with Roman citizenship, Tarsus, which explains of course how he was beheaded and not crucified, because crucifixion was not allowed for Roman citizens. He therefore had that culture in a university city and brought it with him in his baggage, and about half, if not more than half, of the present New Testament is from St. Paul, although actually he's writing through one of the people that we have just mentioned in the first reading. One of them, it seems, would be Tychicus. We can call these amanuenses, people who are writing, because it seems that St. Paul had a problem with his eyes. His reference to it in the Galatians. And these amanuenses, these secretaries, are actually writing, it would seem, under dictatorship, under dictation. And therefore they write correct Greek. But he also had that lingua franca, that Koine Greek of the whole Mediterranean basin, which was the language of communication. And we must remember that actually in the early stages, the Greek probably was more important than the Latin for quite a long time. And in Rome itself, a lot of Greek was spoken because of the large influx of people from other countries, notably slaves. All that is a parenthesis, but it's not indifferent either. We have in St. Luke history coming also from another source. It's oral. It's only in St. Luke that we have the exact notion of what happened in the period of the Lord's childhood and pre-childhood. That is the whole episode with Mary and Elizabeth. It's all there through Luke, which presumes that there is that bond between him and the Mother of God. And that comes through also in this other strand, which is that of iconography, because those who are involved with icons look towards Luke as their patron, because it would seem that he had the gift of being able to also chronicle things in that form. And there are icons which come down to us, which they say come actually from his work. One writes an icon, one doesn't paint an icon. An iconographer is a writer, graphane of icons, and there are quite a few in this hermitage. And these icons are something incarnational. And as one can, at the beginning of Mass, incense also the representation of the saint of the day, if there is one in the chapel, so one does, in that sense, understand that a Christianization, a focus of attention, of devotion, it's not actually adoring a thing, but it is a referring of reverence to the represented thing behind it. That, therefore, is received in heaven as it were done directly to God or to the person that one is trying to honor. And these things actually, in reverse, do come back to us. Now, both in East and West, we have quite a few stories of things that happen in that domain, in which the Lord or the saints accept so much this reverence to them in these representations of them, that if in any way some offence comes to them through offence to these, they sometimes step in. As you came now, I was actually writing to, as it happens, a case in question, not because of that, but it came to my mind. Wow, that's a typical case. In the convent of this particular poor Claire, at least where she was before, she's now been transferred for the time being to another one, but in the other convent, when I used to go there, I used to notice this miracle. There were two miracles in that convent, physical ones, perpetual ones. One was in the chapel itself, the church. It was, because it's an old community, goes right back, the image of Christ dead, Cristo morto. There he is, on that side of the chapel, that kind of altar there, and he would be in that altar, underneath the altar. And it is a very interesting graphic representation of Christ now dead. And according to living tradition, passed on, which is obviously true because they handed it on, years ago, centuries ago, the nuns were making this up, and they could not do the face. They just weren't getting it right. So, okay, they had to leave it. They could not do it anymore for the time. I mean, they abandoned the project and went to bed. And they got up the following morning, and it had been done for them by the angels. So it's an amazing piece of supernatural artwork. Still there for anyone to venerate. And in that same convent, there is the other miracle, a living one. And because people were going to venerate that so much in church, they put it out of the church and put it elsewhere. It actually near where I used to go and I used to help them. And it's this one. It's a crucifix which goes back centuries, and because the community already existed in Protestant times, this person, it was a German apparently, who came in with a gun, and he was furious against these Catholics. So he didn't have anything to do with all this business of idolatry as he thought it was, and so he was about to shoot, and I think he did actually start shooting at the crucifix. And the crucifix knew how to defend itself. It pulled in its legs, and they're still there, pulled in underneath. So it's a perpetual miracle, reminding that the Lord takes as done to him what is done to his representation. And one day, it was the annual gita, that means an outing of the Norbertine house in Rome, where I was staying. We all went in a bus, and we went to various places of prayer just outside Rome. One actually was the place where St. Thomas Aquinas had died, and that was important to us who were at his university. Another was the place of Maria Goretti, the Virgin Saint, Nettuno, and that was also a military place of burial, and there were lots of Americans with us, and they sang very emotionally at this graveyard where so many of their confreres, as it were, had lost their lives trying to defend Italy, because the Americans were very important in the reoccupation of Italy. Anyway, that's another story, but it was all the same pilgrimage. And as we were coming back to Rome, we visited a place of prayer there, and it wasn't to visit a particular place there, but we noticed, wow, there's a miracle here as well. It was this. It was a sword which had been put as a relic on the wall of the church, and it was a sword which started off all right, and then bent completely like this, back on itself. And it was a similar case. It was this person without faith was coming to behave mischievously with regard to the crucifix with his sword, and off he went and started to slice away at the crucifix. And what happened was it was either a crucifix or an image of some kind, or an icon, doesn't really matter, but the point was the focus of attention in this case was the actual instrument he was using, because the Lord defended himself, or the saint, whatever it was, through making this sword not be able to do anything. It bent back on itself, and it's still like that, completely, impossibly bent on itself, because steel doesn't do that. So there it is, reminding people that it's serious stuff to insult even what represents the Lord. How much more, therefore, what is the Lord himself? And on this day we think of, for instance, our Eastern brethren who very much are into icons, and they don't in the East, in the same way as we do, focus in their devotional life when they're coming into church as we would on the Blessed Sacrament, because their notion of the presence, it's more mystical. They don't in the same mental way focalize as we do geographically on one point. They're aware of the presence massively, and it is there, but it's behind doors, you see, it's behind the iconoclastic, they can't actually see it, so that doesn't invite therefore the same devotion. But they do have a tremendous devotion to these icons, they kiss them and so on, with great devotion, they make Santa Claus 3 times, and so on, and they light these candles, and that's the way, and of course the saints and the Lord accept this cult, this respect, and things happen. It happened all centuries ago probably, but these are living traditions which you have to respect. Mount Athos is a place, of course, in Greece, and Greece is important for St. Luke because it's said that he did actually preach there, but he would be important on Mount Athos. Mount Athos is called the Garden of Mary. It's as though, and there may have been some, way back, some vision or something indicating that one day that would be hers. The whole amount, that whole republic of, it's one of the fingers of the Chalcidians going into the sea. It's a completely monastic republic. Thousands and thousands of monks there, and only monks. No women are allowed. It has to be only monks on that. There they are. But there, they call it the Garden of Our Lady. And everywhere there are icons and forms, as it were, of presence of angels and saints there in that form. And therefore they're bathed in the angelic and the holy. Now these icons, therefore, they're links with heaven for them all their life. Even if they're hermits, they have an icon or icons in their little cell with a light burning all the time before it and so on. So that they have a notion of these things. Now, things happen with these icons. Sometimes you get oil coming out of them and so on. In the Eastern world, things happen. And also, one or two things like this would happen. There's one icon on Mount Athos. There was a monk standing before it one time, centuries ago, and he was singing away, and he couldn't remember how to carry on the melody. And out of the blue, the icon gave him the note. So wow, I thought, that's interesting. Heaven is very close to us. And in fact, Newman, that's when he was starting to sort of have a look at the Catholic Church secretly. He was still an Anglican, but that's what hit him. He was used to the Anglican dignity and so on, where it had its whole ethos, and the mind was very important, preaching was important, and of course they had this whole culture of theology which they had. But he was knocked between the eyes by this shock, seeing a very poor Catholic assembly, but what he called holy familiarity. He saw women and children with heaven in a way that he'd not seen before, kissing the knees of statues and that kind of thing. This was something else. And it was so natural to him that he realized, I haven't got the whole story. So in the same way, the Lord comes to where people are at. I mean, we need to respect completely the spirituality of other cultures, other forms of Christianity, for we do not have the right to judge or enter in. God alone knows exactly the value of worship. What we have to do is to be careful that we don't take lightly anything that in any way represents God Almighty. For what is done unto these, he takes as done unto himself. In contrast like this to her beside the Syrian sea, the gracious calling of the Lord, let us like them without a word rise up and follow thee, rise up and follow thee. O Sabbath rest by Galilee, O calm of hills above, where Jesus knelt to share with thee the silence of eternity, interpreted by love, interpreted by love. L'esame finale, the final examination. These were written before the final examination in Rome, but after the visit to the final examination in the case of the soldiers who were trying to free Italy at the end of the Second World War, where we went on pilgrimage shortly before the final exam. So this is the American military cemetery at Nettuno, with many Americans with us who were singing where this happened to the melody of God Save the Queen, but with American words. A little moment of a little pain before a moment huge, a pain to be forgotten in no hour, there where again no comrade has a friend. Eternity begins upon a bullet in the sky, a molecule or two inanimate that anima will heed at speed so high that 'twill the cloud of mystery perforate. 'Twill be for evermore and evermore, mid earth's revolving days and fading nights of memory's short mind, behind this door that is a little grave, where untraced flights flee gadgets highly tuned. 'Twill be all told, the story of a copybook ne'er owned.